Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to do a weekly recap video, this time on the SmackDown that took place yesterday, excuse me, Friday, which was October 17th in San Jose, California. Nick Aldis kicks off the show to announce that the match between Drew and Jacob will be the number one contenders match for that undisputed championship being held by Cody Rhodes. Cody then graces us with his presence, addresses the loss to Seth over the weekend, but says that their paths really don't need to cross it ever again. But that's not really how that works. He then goes on to say that Seth has his hands full for the moment on Raw, and Cody will now focus on SmackDown things, starting with that number one contenders match later on this evening. So, yeah, nothing crazy there, but similar to the way NXT, kind of ran this week. Now focusing on more of what this show only has to offer, which is great to see. So between this and the next match, we have a backstage segment where we see the new and improved MFT take out Ray Phoenix. So interesting bit there. MFT taking no prisoners and taking out anyone and everyone who gets in their way. We then have our first match of the night, which has Zarya and Sol Ruka going up and challenging Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss for that WWE Women's Tag Team Championship. Yeah, this was a decent back and forth, and this does end up seeing Charlotte tap out Sol Ruka with the figure eight to win and retain those tag team championships. Little asterisk obviously should be placed there, as Blake Monroe was seen at ringside here, kind of continuing that bit with her and Sol, as Blake has made it clear that she is going after that North American title that Sol currently possesses. We then see a video package of Aleister Black and Zelina Vega. Nothing groundbreaking here or really heavy on context, but basically just saying that they're putting all their cards on the table, showing their alliance, clearly will be a force to be reckoned with going forward. And yeah, pretty cool video package as far as those go. Had like a little white snake was pretty intense too. So yeah, looking forward to see what those two can offer us going forward. We then get into the part of this video that will probably take up the largest portion, and that is, of course, the Sami Zayn Open Challenge for his U.S. Championship. This was even after Aldis apparently took him off the card completely. Aldis stated that he both a deserved Shinsuke deserved a rematch, and he didn't want the MFT causing any even more issues than they already have that evening. Sammy ignores this, saying that's not how he works and that's not how this works. Makes his way to the ring anyways. The Miz appears to answer the challenge as he was talking to Aldis as Sami Zayn came to interrupt in the back. And then he was cut off by Carmelo Hayes getting that revenge, basically turning the tables to what happened to him as he tried to answer last week. After that, the challenge is answered by none other than a returning Ilya Dragunov to the, you know, we've been expecting him. I would say it's a surprise, but we've both been longing for him for quite some time. Elated to see him back and looks incredible. KP, I know you were excited for this one as well. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on that. The crowd didn't respond to this nearly enough as I thought they should have. But that all kind of changes after this match, which was an absolute banger. What a return for Dragunov. I felt this was uh, a quality run for Zayn. I think it did. I think it did like take a step back for him for his character work. Obviously, focusing just on the open challenge stuff. But it made Sammy and the U.S. title both look like $1 million, in my opinion. You can't go wrong with an open challenge kind of format as he's been doing. And I think this is just kind of a great kind of a way to measure and see if Zayn could hold a title successfully. Obviously, if he were to, the grand scheme of things is to go up to the big and the best title that WWE has to offer, and in this case being the undisputed title on the SmackDown side. I think it's clear that he can hold it down. Obviously, he wouldn't be doing the open challenge format, but I think, like I said, it took felt like his character work took a backstage to this, but clearly in ring, which I don't think has ever really been in question. Sammy does have what it takes. Um, so yeah, new U.S. title here, and Ilya, what a return! Look great doing it. These two, I mean, goodness gracious, these two guys are two of the best in the ring to do it, and they kind of show that off here. Ilya with your new U.S. championship. Uh, I don't think he'll be doing the open challenge stuff, but I think that would be a great idea because I, while Ilya does have character work, I don't think it's as good as Sammy's. So I would say that I think an open challenge continuing would be a great idea here and would further kind of help get him over. I know a lot of people on main maybe don't have the best idea of who he is. I've seen him on main, but obviously most of his work coming from NXT. So yeah, I think I'm curious to see how they're gonna book Ilya, but yeah, after the match, Sammy and Ilya go off to congratulate each other, but are quickly interrupted by the MFT, and a little more on that later. But I want to start off with this first half of SmackDown, kind of cut it off there. KP, what were your thoughts on the first half of SmackDown, including that tag team championship match and this U.S. title match, and the returning Ilya Dragunov?
Yeah, pretty good first half of SmackDown, right? I think it's something that we can, not talk about too often recently, but this had a different feel to it, and it was definitely very apparent, as basically the show went on in those early stages. Yeah, you start off with Nicole, as like you said, and announced that number contenders match for later in the show. This all stems from rumors of Jacob Fatu suffering some sort of injury or non-wrestling related issue very recently. So, as far as this is concerned, makes sense, to be fair. Probably is the right idea to to try and speed things up a little bit. Unfortunately, not going to get that big feud with Drew McIntyre, but we'll talk a little bit more about all that later on. But yeah, in terms of just laying the foundations for the start of the show. Cody looked particularly, focused, lasered in on things that he has to do, to represent SmackDown. Obviously, he would refer back to the loss against Seth Rollins at Crown Jewel, and saying that he does have his own things to deal with and to look forward to. Yeah, he would basically just hype up Jacob Fatu. They were in San Jose, California, and that was sort of like where Jacob Fatu is built from, and basically just had a stomping grounds. So yeah, the crowd were obviously very excited to see that happen. So yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit more in later detail later on in this podcast. But yeah, going into our first match, like you said, with Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair defending the titles against Zol Ruka and Zarya. Yeah, this was a fun match. I thought the team from NXT did very, very well. They showed up. They had a very competitive contest. It took Charlotte and Alexa to levels that I don't really think we've seen them go to in a little while now. So that's quite nice. I mean, retrospectively, you talk about the last title opportunity that went on SmackDown, that was to Chelsea Green and Alba Fire, right? And yeah, they didn't fare anywhere near as well as Sol Ruka and Zarya did. So it was quite interesting to see the team from NXT shining here really on the main roster. So that was really good to see. I enjoyed the competitive back and forth the two teams had, and yeah, ultimately in the end, Charlotte Flair and Alexa won, which is the right call. But yeah, we had a little bit of a nuisance stuff on the outside with Blake Monroe, who's going to be challenging Sol Ruka for that North American Championship at NXT's Halloween Havoc coming up soon. So yeah, just sort of like paving the way for that to happen, which is going to be really cool. And yeah, Charlotte Flair's capitalizing, figure eight, gets the win. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good competitive tag team match between the two teams, and showcased Sol Ruka and Zarya really, really well. So yeah, no complaints from me. I thought this was great. And then yeah, speaking of great matches, the following segment was just brilliant. First and foremost, the Miz coming on out and getting attacked by Mello. That continues. That keeps going. Great. And then obviously we get, a little bit of like, oh, well, who's actually going to be then? And then we get a returning Ilya Dragunov, which is just amazing to see. He was out for, around a year or so. And, we like you said a little bit earlier, we've been expecting him for a while. And I think they did a great job of, just sort of like waiting out a little bit. SmackDown clearly needs, a few more bigger names, big talent to come on down and sort of like bolster up the roster. And he's absolutely perfect for that. He's a great in-ring talent. We saw that in spades during this matchup. him and Sammy just put on an absolute clinic in the ring, and it was a really, really fun, compelling contest. They even showed a little bit of there's a clip of just action that happened during the ad break. And, normally you'd see like just like one little thing, and it's it's quite slow paced, generally speaking, during those ad breaks. The clip did not insinuate that at all. It looked like it was still heavy hitting. It was still crazy between both men, and it didn't really slow down at all. So yeah, it seemed like these two just really went hell to leather from start to finish, and they just had a really, really fun, engaging, great match. So yeah, can't fault it really. Solo Sikoa playing a very small distraction at the end, but doesn't ultimately affect the end of the matchup either, because Sammy still counters a move from Ilya Dragunov, hits the exploder suplex, goes for the haluva kick, and that's when Ilya Dragunov hits the torpedo Moscow, and then follows up with the H bomb to pin Sami Zayn. So yeah, just I think Sami's open challenge was fantastic. The match that he had were brilliant. There were some absolute killer ones on there. You talk about the likes of Ray Phoenix and Aleister Black, and obviously now Ilya Dragunov and Carmelo Hayes, and there are so many names. I think there was a 7 in total. Starting with John Cena all those many weeks ago, and yeah, I got no complaints for it. I thought it was fantastic. Thought he did a great job with it. Built him up, built the prestige of the title back after honestly it was a bit mudded for a while. So it's nice to see it sort of like get some sort of prestige back to the situation. And now Ilya Dragunov has the next step. So look forward to seeing how his reign goes. Started off brilliantly with that title victory over Sami Zayn here, and yeah, whether it will be open challenges still going forward, I wouldn't be against it, but also I wouldn't mind seeing, some some pretty great feuds for this championship. So either way, I'm sure Ilya Dragunov's going to absolutely kill it. It's great to have him back, and what a matchup it was for him to have on his return. Yeah, great start to the first half of SmackDown, and yeah, just just awesome. You don't get to speak about SmackDown in such high notes recently, so this is quite refreshing.
Yeah, and it's you kind of mentioned it. The commercial breaks, those are always a pain, but especially during that match. But just you know, to break up that content was hard to see. And yeah, we hate to see these injuries. Obviously being plagued on the main roster right now. Uh, Injury bugs definitely going around. But with that, you see, these faces return, such as Shinsuke last week and this week Ilya. So it is part of the business, really. Like I said, you hate to see anyone go down, but with that, you get the opportunity to see faces you haven't seen for a while. So it all is just part of the business, and we all take it in stride, and we just enjoy the talent while we have them, because you never know, when someone's going to be gone for say a year. So with that, we will swiftly move on to the second half of SmackDown. As I mentioned, post match of that Sami Zayn Ilya Dragunov match, it looked like they were going to get up and show signs of respect towards each other, but were cut off by that MFT faction. Ray Phoenix also comes down and tries to get a little bit of revenge from earlier in the evening, but is quickly shut down as well. Then the Wyatt Six answers the call, and we get yet another face off of these two teams, less Bo Dallas, of course. But yeah, even when Bo Dallas comes out, the numbers game here is going to be a little interesting to see how that plays off. Several mentions of war between these two factions by Vic Joseph and Corey Graves throughout the evening. So possibly where we're headed with that. But again, the numbers game kind of seems to be in the favor of MFT, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. And if that is the direction we're headed, absolutely no complaints from me. We then see a backstage segment with Tiffany Stratton. She's cut off by Kiana James. Basically, Kiana says, "This is why I never offered my services to you, because I knew you couldn't beat someone like Vaquer, who did defeat her at Crown Jewel over last weekend." Tiffany basically says, "Put your money where your mouth is, and let's go ahead and they set up a match for next week." So Kiana James and Tiffany Stratton next week. Hopefully, somehow giving us Tiffany Stratton and Julia. I think that's kind of the end game there. We then get a match between MCMG and Los Garza. This is set up by an anniversary discussion backstage by MCMG, basically saying they've been here for a year and wanted to celebrate by beating the team that they first defeated upon arrival, and that is, of course, Los Garza. So MCMG do get that win in a decent contest here, um, winning by hitting a skull and bones. And after the match, we see a backstage segment with Fraxium and DIY trying to ignite that flame once more. That is what at one time was an unbelievable tag team division here on SmackDown. So trying to get our foot in the door there to get that division back on fire, and absolutely no complaints from me. Obviously, the top of that division appears to be a bit busy with MFT, but regardless, we can continue to build. No, yeah, no complaints from me. We then get into what was supposed to be the main event, and that, of course, is that number one contenders match between Drew and Jacob. Unfortunately, was never meant to be, as all those rumors online do appear to be true. We see Jacob backstage, clearly ambushed, and then we go back to the ring where Drew is telling the ref to raise his hand as he is now the number one contender. Uh, we see all this come out and say something to the line of, if I find out you have anything to do with this, you'll be in big trouble." Um, Cody then comes out, kind of continuing that attitude, fierce attitude he's had throughout the night. Comes out and says, well, let's go ahead and give him a contest, anyways. Cody's still in his business attire, I think, kind of wanting to pass the message along that. He was so flustered that he couldn't even put his wrestling gear on. But the action between Rhodes and Drew was good enough for what it was. Obviously, spilled out on the outside of the ring, and then Cody lands a shot on Drew with that title belt, which is quite unusual for him. But again, clearly showing how personal this feud is going to be. Um, then we see a spot where Cody looks to try to get Drew through the announce table, but then everything is separated by officials. But both men clearly looking like they're ready for more. So KP, not as good of a second half as first half. I think that's fair to say. But what were your thoughts on everything we've seen here? Uh, possibilities of a war game match between the two teams here at the top, being MFT and Wyatt Six, and the tag match and the feud looks like we're getting between Cody and Drew. I think has been coming for quite some time. We've been long waiting for that. But what are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I would agree that the second half maybe wasn't quite as good as the first half, but the first half had a lot to live up to. So, naturally speaking, it was going to be very difficult to hit that level still. But yeah, regardless of the fact, just coming off the back of the Sammy and Ilya matchup with MFTs, just basically laying waste to both men, and then Ray Phoenix as well. And then the showdown with the Wyatts. It's it seems to be setting things up for Survivor Series, right? That's where my mind's going with this one. War games potentially. My only slight question is that you do have obviously the 5 men of MFT, which makes perfect sense. Being 5 versus 5 in war games, but then you've got on the Wyatt Six side, we haven't seen Bo Dallas, Uncle Howdy, whatever you want to call him, in a number of weeks now. And whether he's dealing with another injury, we've seen him like on the Trons and stuff, sure, doing vignettes and promos and whatever. But in terms of in ring, we haven't seen him in a little while. So I don't know whether he's got some issues backstage, behind the scenes, I want to say, with injuries or whatever. Because that kept him out for a large part of last year as well. So, of this year actually as well. So, yeah, that obviously was a detriment to the entire group back then. But now they are keeping him around. They are the tag team champions. They have to do that. So Nikki Cross sort of like, I don't know, getting into the main authoritative figure, standing up to Solo Sikoa yet again here on this SmackDown. They've only at the moment got 3 men that are clearly, able to be in the ring and taking bumps and whatnot. So, do we see maybe like a team of like the Wyatts and Ilya and Sammy joining up with them? It sounds random, but they've been attacked. Sammy's been attacked 2 weeks in a row by the MFTs now, so naturally he's going to have some sort of beef with them. And then Ilya Dragunov, obviously he's not going to be happy. He's not going to lay that one down. He's a Mad Dragon after all, so he's going to come back out with a vengeance. So, I mean, yeah, that's where my mind's going at the moment. It's quite interesting. So we guys have to see how that does really take place. But yeah, it's a funky little mashup there if it does go that way. A segment that I did quite like afterwards, Motor City Machine Guns back in action. We don't really see them competing in tag team matches too often of late, and I think they've sort of been, I don't know if they've been lost in the shuffle as such, but the tag team division on SmackDown is so stacked. and obviously just going off the back of Street Profits being involved week in, week out, to having them go completely AWOL this week. It does almost seem like, one tag team gets displayed, one tag team has to basically be missing. So DIY literally said in their segment afterwards as well, they've been hanging around, sort of like waiting for the opportunity to come back and strike back when they were talking to Fraxium about that. So it does feel like, they do have to do some sort of like shuffling around with the tag team division on SmackDown. And fair enough, there are a lot of quality teams there, so you can't show them off every single week. Not all of them anyway. But yeah, I don't know. It does almost feel like, you sort of like get these like hidden teams, and then like they get remembered and they just get brought back in, sort of thing. Los Garza, you got to feel with them. They're basically the whipping boys at the moment, aren't they? They're taking loss after loss. I speak of their consistency over the last year or so, but they do just keep taking these losses as of recent. So yeah, but it's good to see City Machine Guns back in on the winning side of things. Competing in a matchup. Hopefully we can see more of them as well. I feel like they could be they could be utilized a lot more often. So yeah, I was happy to see them in action. It was a decent enough matchup between the two teams. I enjoyed it. So yeah, can't really complain about that one, to be fair. And then in the main event and that whole situation beforehand with Nick Aldis and Drew McIntyre, I thought it was quite interesting that Drew said that he wasn't the one that attacked Jacob Fatu. Drew is a very, he's a very honest guy. He's not going to lie about attacking somebody. So for him to say that he didn't do it, and he said like if it was me, I'm not going to shy about that. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to take pride in what I did to him. So that's actually very true to Drew's character. So I would believe him that he didn't do it, but it does raise a question of who actually did attack Jacob Fatu. So if that's something they're going to play out, for a little while and have eventually be revealed at some point down the line, however long Jacob's going to be out for, then yeah, this could be quite interesting. Not entirely sure who I think it is at the moment, but I'm pretty certain it's not Drew, because it just doesn't make sense for him to lie about it. So I can resonate with that. But yeah, Cody coming on down, corporate Cody, as Drew would call him. That tickled me, to be fair. Yeah, the brawl that happened between the two men, then setting up that impromptu matchup type thing. Cody almost made it sound like it was for the WWE title. I don't think it was, but he made it sound like it was. Like, if you want the title match right here, right now, come and get it, sort of thing, is what he said. Similar words to that extent. So it did sound like it was for the title, but I don't believe it was. That was just my general gauge and take on the situation. But yeah, you mentioned it as well. Cody smashing the WWE title over Drew McIntyre's face. That was interesting. Yeah, wouldn't expect that from Cody Rhodes. Maybe out of character a little before him, showing a bit more of an aggressive side. But Drew has been bringing that out of him recently, so I guess you could say it does make a little bit of sense. And then, yeah, trying to put him through the announce table, then the two get separated. The officials literally drag Drew McIntyre away. Cody does sort of like catch up to him eventually as Drew is dragged around the other side of the ring. And yeah, he hits a top rope dive to stand tall at the end of the show then. So yeah, I don't know. It was a weird main event, if we're calling it that, right? It was a match, I guess, so it's the main event, sure. Yeah, it was a bit of a strange vibe. A lot of rumors about how WWE are booking their shows of recent. I'm not sure if you've seen the rumors on the web, but they crack me up as well. But yeah, maybe this was booked, artificially. I'm not too sure if it was, but if it was, I guess I can kind of see that, because it was a bit of a strange feel to it. But honestly, I didn't mind it. I thought it was all right. It looked a bit chaotic and it was a bit, confusing, but I thought it was okay. It's something different. So trying something different, testing something different out, I'm not going to shy against that unless it is absolutely god-awful and terrible. But considering you got somebody who is meant to have a match tonight no longer be able to compete, I mean, what are you really supposed to be able to do? You're not going to have that many options. So, we go now over to Saturday night's the main event. It looks like it's going to be Drew McIntyre against Cody Rhodes for the WWE title once again. Will Drew once again fall short? Obviously, we'll talk about that in greater detail going forward. But yeah, it's another bout between these two men. So let's see how that one goes down. In terms of SmackDown, though, I thought this was a solid episode. There's a couple of little things that maybe weren't quite perfect, but besides that, it had a lot going on. It had a great return, had a great match between Sami and Ilya. Saw Ruka and Zarya look like stars, against Alexa and Charlotte. Motor City Machine Guns back in action. MFTs and the Wyatts squaring up again. And then Cody and Drew with their shenanigans. Nick Aldis quite heavily involved as well. So, yeah, I mean, I thought it did all the right things here. Just seeing a little bit more of the women's champions could have been nice, but besides that, I thought it was pretty good. I gave it an 8 out of 10, quite solid, and just generally nice to see a good episode of SmackDown for once in a while. But that Sami and Ilya match, wow, they'll be talking about that one for a little while. That was spectacular.
Yeah, absolutely. The highlight of SmackDown this week was Ilya and Sammy, as if that was ever in question. But yeah, absolutely great, phenomenal way of having someone return. And I don't think Sammy looks weak in the slightest there. Curious to see kind of where everyone goes from there, where the chips fall, if you will. Um, yeah, and Zaruka looked great as well. I think both of them, especially Soul, is ready for main roster anytime she feels, they feel that she is ready. So yeah, MFT and Wyatt Six. Yeah, you make an interesting point. I really don't want to see Sammy and Ilya kind of with Wyatt Six. I just think that feels very strange. But even with Bo Dallas, Uncle Howdy there, it's five men against five, four men and a woman. So I think even that's kind of interesting. I don't maybe Wyatt Six recruit another member. Is that still a possibility? I'm not really sure. Probably not, but yeah, interesting. We'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see where that goes. The finish with Cody and Drew, I think, is yeah. I guess the only other option, really, as you kind of alluded to, was uh, if they didn't do this, just having announcing that Drew would have been the number one contender, or slot someone else in there for to have him to beat. I kind of like this kind of alternate route here that they took, simply because it makes that rivalry feel all the more personal. And even if everyone's confused about the title or the match actually being a title match or not, even the commentators are like, I don't know what's going on. But yeah, better than just saying, here's your number one contender, deal with it or whatever. So I like that as well. But yeah, yeah, pretty good SmackDown. I think definitely tapered off the second half, but first half was really really good. So we can forgive. I guess one a 7.5 out of 10. Like I said, the second half just kind of tapered off a bit, but that first half probably would have got close to a 10 out of 10 for me otherwise. So yeah, with that SmackDown recap and the books. Building up to Saturday Night Main Event to 2 weeks from yesterday, which is November 1st. We'll have that. But then this next week, we of course have Raw, NXT, and SmackDown. But we also have NXT's Halloween Havoc. So looking forward to that as well. So plenty to look forward to here on the push. With that, this has been the latest episode of the Push with Nick and KP. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.